This is really an advanced workshop. This is really more for those of you who've done the presentation 100 times and are looking to get to that next level. So those of you who are new, I see a few names on here that are relatively new. This is stuff that can help you and to keep in mind, but most of what we talk about today, I want you guys to write down, take your notes, and then stick in a folder somewhere. And after you've done, 20, 25 presentations, then bring it out, because the notes will make a lot more sense at that point. Because these are ways of taking what we were taught in training and just elevating it to that next level. So as we go through there, I just want to start off. I'm going to go through, first of all, the 5 most common mistakes that people make when doing the presentation, and the most 5 common mistakes people make when they do the close. So we want to really just take a moment and go through those, and then I'm actually going to walk through the entire presentation and kind of go over what to say, not specifics, but really what you need to accomplish as you go through the presentation. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to share the screen here. I'm going to pop this up, and I'm going to start out with the top 5 mistakes made during the presentation. And the number 5 mistake is not preparing yourself beforehand. And what do I mean by that? That really comes in 2 folds. The first thing you need to do before you walk into a presentation is take a few moments and compose yourself. So many of us show up at 1:59 for a 2 o'clock presentation. We run in there, we plop down in the chair, and we're just discombobulated. So I would always encourage you to take a few minutes before the presentation just to compose yourself. But in addition to that, take a few moments to think about what the most likely objection is from that business owner. I was talking with one of my people earlier today, and they've got an appointment coming up later on with a guy that they admit's never advertised before. He even admitted he doesn't understand advertising. And I asked her, what is the most likely objection? Well, if you take a moment to think about it, the most likely objection for someone who's never bought advertising is going to be the price. So I said, are you prepared to handle that objection? And what you will discover, if you take a few moments to anticipate what the most likely objection is, or maybe the top 2 or 3, and prepare yourself and go ahead and play that out in your head, it will significantly increase your chances of closing that sale, because you're not going to be blindsided. So prepare yourself emotionally, physically, and also be ready for the most likely objection before you walk into a presentation. Next mistake, not doing a consistent presentation. When you're doing your presentation, you need to do everything possible to make sure it is exactly the same every time, or as close as you can get it. Because here's what happens. Whether we want to admit it or not, every single one of us thinks that somewhere out there in the universe is a presentation that if I master it, every single person's going to buy. Just like we do with phone scripts. We think there's a perfect phone script that if I master it, every single person's going to schedule an appointment with me. And there's just not, because there's so many factors, mainly timing, that goes into whether somebody buys or not, that there isn't a perfect presentation. But what happens is, because we convince ourselves there is one, when we don't close a sale, we leave there thinking, what did I do wrong? What can I do differently? And so the next time we do a presentation, we change it. Or we'll hear something on a conference call and we'll go, wow, that's awesome. And we'll stick it in. Well, what happens is when we make those changes every single time we do a presentation, we never get good, because that presentation is always new. And so it's just like we're doing it for the first time every single time we do it. And what you need to do is you need to figure out what you're going to say in your presentation and say that exact same thing every single time for a couple weeks, and then see what kind of patterns you're getting, and then make a tweak and do that presentation for 2 weeks. Because I can tell you right now, when I do role plays, one of the things I very consciously make myself aware of is the energy level of the person doing the presentation. The higher your energy, the more likely you are to make a sale. And when you're doing something that is the same every single time, your energy level's way up here. But the moment you hit a part of the presentation that's new to you, it plummets. And from the client's perspective, that makes it sound like you don't know what you're doing and you don't have confidence in the product. And the moment they get that, it cuts down on your chances of closing the sale. So do a consistent presentation so that your energy levels are always high, because you're not thinking about what you're saying. I can tell you right now, a high energy, bad presentation closes more sales than a fluctuating or low energy, perfect presentation. So just always focus on keeping those energy levels high. And the simplest way to do that is to do the same thing every single time. Next mistake, number 3, not painting the client into the magazine tour. When you're doing a magazine tour, you need to make sure you provide the imagination for that client. Unfortunately, most of the people that we do presentations for aren't very imaginative. Maybe they've never advertised in a magazine before. Maybe they find it intimidating and they can't see themselves in that role. And so you have to paint them into the picture. Chris Scott does a tremendous demonstration of a run through in back office. Be sure to listen to it under resources, do a search for Chris Scott, and he walks you through that presentation. The magazine tour, if all you did was walk in and show the video and do the magazine tour at its best, you would close a lot of sales. So make sure you provide them with the imagination to see themselves in the magazine. Number 2, not asking the book-in questions. If you don't ask both book-in questions, if you don't ask, is this market important to you? And can you think of a better way to reach this market? You're leaving a lot of money on the table. Because think about what those 2 questions accomplish psychologically. The first one says, this is a market I want to reach. And the second one says, I can't think of a better way to reach it. That basically put 1 + 1 = 2. They know they need to be in the magazine. That is an acknowledgement on the client's part that they know they should be in this magazine. And that's tremendous psychologically to your advantage. And it really sets up the close very well. And then the final mistake in the presentation is making it all about us and not about them. One of the things I hear in the presentations often is it's just all about our magazine. And remember, your customers don't care about your magazine. What they care about is whether or not your magazine can help them grow their business. We've all been to that party where somebody's in there talking to us and all they want to do is brag about everything they've done and everything they've got in the works and everything, and you just kind of want to walk away. That's the same thing it is with the presentation. You have to constantly be reminding them of why what we're doing is important to what they're doing. So those are the 5 biggest mistakes in the presentation. Just to recap, making it all about us and not them, not asking the book-in questions, not painting the client into the magazine tour, not doing a consistent presentation, and not preparing yourself beforehand. You do those things, you're going to have a better presentation. Now I want to move to the 5 biggest mistakes people make at the closing. Now, when you look at our presentation, it's very important to understand the 2 halves of it. The first half is the presentation itself. This is when people get to learn what we do that can help their business. That goes from the opening comments all the way till you ask the second bookend question. Can you think of a better way to reach this market? Now, here it's very important. We've all watched legal dramas on TV. And one of the things we always see is we see during a trial, the defense attorney is not allowed to present new evidence during the closing arguments. That same thing applies to us. One of the biggest mistakes people make is they get people excited about the magazine. The person answers, I can't think of a better way to reach this market. And then we continue to add more information as time goes on. We continue to add more details and we muddy the water. Once you have them answering the question, I can't think of a better way to reach this market, stop. You've sold them. So your energy level during that first half of the presentation needs to be really high. What happens then? Now we move into the close. And in the close, it's not about selling them on the magazine anymore. It's about making them feel comfortable with the decision to buy. Most of the people who don't buy in our magazines, it's not because they don't like the magazine. It's because they lack the confidence to make a big decision. And so they kick the can down the road and eventually they forget why they wanted to be in it and life goes on. So the close is all about making the client feel comfortable saying yes. So the first half of the presentation is about excitement, energy. The second half of the presentation is about empathy and making them feel comfortable. So your voice should change. Your voice should shift from being way up here to be very consoling and comforting, because that's what's holding the sale up at this point. Now, when we look at the top 5 mistakes that are made during the close, the number 5 is not setting it up correctly. There's so many elements about setting up the close that if it's not done correctly, you're not going to make the sale. So the first one is making sure all the decision makers are there. Because if there is someone involved in the decision making that's not there, your odds of closing are pretty slim. We all know that people who don't see the presentation almost always say no, because all they see is magazine, the price, and boom, no. It's important for them to see the value. So do everything you can to make sure that everyone who needs to be there is there. The second part of setting up the close is making them very clear from the very beginning that you're there to close a deal, that you're there to close a deal. One of the things that you will hear me say at the very beginning is something like this. Hey, I appreciate you taking time to meet with me today. I know we're both very busy, but I think you're going to find this time well spent. I think you're going to see that what we're doing here can really help your business grow. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you a little bit about our company. I'm going to show you a quick video. I'm going to take you on a tour of one of our magazines and show you the little things that we do that can help your business grow. And then at the end, I'm going to ask you to come on board as a partner with me. Does that make sense? And by saying that at the very beginning, you've now set the tone for closing the deal, because they now expect you to ask for the sale. And they're actually viewing the presentation differently now, because they know at the end they're going to be asked to come on board as a partner. So it engages them more with the presentation. And then the third place that you set up the close is right immediately following the second bookend question. When you're transitioning from the presentation to the close, simply ask this question. Hey, if money wasn't an issue, would you want to be part of the magazine? Because when you ask that question, that automatically gives you the power to have the money talk. The last thing you want is to give that power to the client. And whenever you say, yeah, I'll call you back on Monday, then that's what happens. You've given the power to control when the money talk happens to the client, and it's a conversation they don't want to have. Nobody wants to talk about their company finances with a total stranger. And if you leave it up to them to initiate that conversation, it's just simply never going to happen. So that's the first one. Next one is too many options. When you get to the end, and you're ready to ask for the sale, it needs to be a yes or no answer. It needs to be one option. When you think of our presentation, think of the questions we ask. Is this a market that's important to you? Can you think of a better way to reach this market? Both yes or no questions. If money wasn't an issue, would you want to be in the magazine? Yes or no question. What size? How do you see your company in ad sizes? It's a pick one of 6. If you were going to pick one of these 3 options, which one would be best for your business? Narrowed it down. And then finally, boom, are you ready to be my plumbing expert? You know, if a person is ever asked to decide 2 things at once, they will make no decision whatsoever. And on that note, I just want to share this real quickly, and this is a little sidebar here. If you're ever in a situation where you have a person that loves the magazine and they absolutely want to be your expert, and they can't decide between a 3rd page and a 1/2 page, and they're like, man, yeah, I want to be the expert, but I don't know if I want the 3rd or the 1/2. Can you check back with me on Monday? The moment you say yes, the sale is done, because they will become so fixated on 3rd page versus 1/2 page, and they're so afraid they're going to pick the wrong one that they simply won't make a decision at all, and they'll never be in the magazine. And I guarantee you, every person on this call has had that exact situation. If you've been around long enough, you've had somebody that was fixated on, couldn't pick a size, but loved the magazine, wanted to be the expert, but they never bought because they were terrified they'd pick the wrong size. So when you're in that situation, you have to narrow it for them. You simply take the bigger ad off the table. Say, hey, I tell you what, if you can't decide between a 3rd and a 1/2, that tells me that you like the 1/2 page size, but you really like the price of the 3rd page and you're just not comfortable with anything more than that. Let's do this for now. Let's take that 1/2 page off the table. Let's go back and let's just focus on a 3rd. I tell you what I'll do. I'll throw in a free upgrade the first month so you can see what that 1/2 page looks like. But you'll only be in for the 3rd page price because that's what you're comfortable for. I don't want you doing anything you're not comfortable. Does that seem like a plan? Boom. Now they're ready to sign the 3rd page because you made that decision for them. And now that it's simply back to a yes or no question. Are you ready to be my 3rd page plumbing expert? Yeah, okay, good. Let's go. If you ever present at the end, when you ask for the sale, at the end, when you ask for the sale, if it is not a yes or no question, you're not going to close the sale. Because the more decisions someone has to make, the less likely they are to make any of them. So always remember that. Mistake number 3 in the closing: over discounting or dropping the price without changing the offer. You know, we have so many great tools at our disposal for navigating to a comfortable price. You don't just want to start dropping the price without taking stuff away and over discounting. You know, one of the things that a lot of newbies will wrestle with is they feel like they're selling out of their own pocketbook. I mean, let's be honest. All of us would never pay $1,200 for a half-page ad plus 2 pro accounts. But you know, the thing about it is we don't have to, because we're not a business. These folks are businesses. They've got budgets for advertising. They have to advertise or they do not survive. But so many times we look at that price and we're thinking, oh my gosh, that's just too high. It's just too high. It's just too high. And we start out with an over discount. We drop the price immediately, when price usually isn't the issue. It's usually perception of value. So don't over discount. Go by the structure we teach. Stay with that and then navigate backwards. And the other thing that comes up is when you do drop the price, you have to change the package. I mean, imagine this. Imagine you go to buy a car and you have a budget of $20,000 for a used car. And you're on the lot and you're talking with the sales guy and he's like, no, I can't do any better than 23,000. That's as low as I can possibly go. And then you start to walk away and he comes running across the parking lot and runs down your car and says, okay. I tell you what, I can do 20 after all. What's going to be your impression of that salesperson? You might buy the car, but you're going to hate it because you're always going to remember that salesperson that was trying to screw you out of $3,000. Because if he could have sold it to you for $20,000 in the first place, why didn't he? Because he was trying to screw you out of the $3,000. So it's the same way with us. If you're there and somebody says, no, I tell you what, I'm going to have to think about it. I'm just not comfortable with that. And your next words out of your mouth are, well, I tell you what, I can drop $75 off of it. Is that okay? Will you buy it then? You're that salesperson. You're that guy that was just trying to screw them out of $75 a minute ago. They may buy the ad campaign, but they're going to be the ones complaining 3 months from now. It's not working for them. And you used all these pressure tactics because they don't see the value. When you over discount, you devalue your product. One of the things you'll hear me say all the time is, I don't know anything about cars. I put them in gear and they drive. But I know that a Mercedes is a better car than a Kia because it costs more. I rate the value of that car based on the fact it costs more. And that same thing applies to our magazines. The less they pay, the less they value it. And if you're over discounting, it comes into play. So don't drop without changing the offer. Okay, number 2, not addressing the objections, specifically the objection, I need to think about it. You know, you really, I mean, so many times, and I'm not going to call any names here. I don't want to embarrass anybody, but I went on a presentation with somebody once, and we got to the end. He did a great presentation. We got to the end, and the woman said, "Well, I can tell you, I like what you're doing. I don't really buy a lot of what you're talking about with the advertising, but I like what you're doing. Let me think about it. Call me back on Monday." And he jumped up and he said, "Okay, I tell you what, I'll call you back Monday morning about 10 o'clock. Is that okay?" And he started to walk out and he noticed I wasn't moving. And I just looked at her and I said, "Let me just ask you a quick question. You said there's parts you don't really understand or buy. Please tell me what those are, because I'm very curious as to what it is you're concerned about." You have to have that conversation. You can't just leave an objection hanging out there. And you have to, especially I need to think about it. And we're going to talk, Aaron, when we get to the demonstration on how to handle that. I need to think about it. I need to think about it 99 times out of 100. It means I'm not comfortable with that price, but I'm hoping either by Monday I'll get comfortable with it, which isn't going to happen, or at least I'll figure out a way to tell you I'm not comfortable with it that doesn't make me look like a loser. Because that's what people are thinking. That's what people are thinking. If the price is too high for them, they're embarrassed to tell you that because they want you to think their business can afford anything. So you have to be able to handle that objection. And then the number one mistake people make is not asking for the sale. I would say half of the role plays that I do with people, they don't ask for the sale. They don't ask for the sale. They think they do. They'll say something like, well, what do you think? Well, that ain't asking for the sale. Asking for the sale is a yes or no question. Are you ready to be my plumbing expert? That's asking for the sale. Are you ready to start your campaign today? That's asking for the sale. Any questions is not asking for the sale. But I hear that all the time. And I can tell you, if you want to know whether or not you're asking for the sale each time, ask yourself this question. What is my closing question? What is my closing question? Because top level people who ask for the sale regularly always ask for the sale the same way. If you don't know what your closing question is, you don't have one, and you're not asking for the sale. Period. Simple as that. If you don't know, if you ask me, if I'm asked 100 times what my closing question is, my closing question is, are you ready to be my plumbing expert today? Are you ready to become my plumbing expert today? If I already have a plumbing expert, are you ready to go ahead and start your campaign so we can plan out how to help your business grow? I mean, you have to ask for the sale. If you can't tell me what your closing question is, you're not asking one. Simple as that. So those are the mistakes. I'll recap them here real quickly on the things. Not asking for the sale, number one. Not addressing objections, over discounting, too many options, and not setting it up correctly. Now, I'm going to throw one more into there that's really come up. It came up in a role play I did the other day. And tomorrow's daily message is going to bring this up because it's really resonated with me. Derek and I were talking about, he wrote an article for LinkedIn that I'm linking to as my daily article tomorrow, a little insight there about the importance of silence when you ask for the sale. Shut your mouth. Because so many times we hate silence. And remember, you just dumped a ton of information on this person. They didn't know you existed before you started the presentation. And now 30 minutes later, you're asking them for $30,000 or $40,000. That requires a lot of processing. It requires a lot of mental juggling. It requires a lot of financial juggling in their mind. It can sometimes take 5 to 10 minutes for a client to process all of that to give you an answer. And the other day I was on a role play, and I played that role because I suspected that this person I was working with had that problem. And literally, when they asked me for the sale, they did do that, thank God. I just sat there. And it wasn't 3 seconds before they felt like they had to say something. They had to throw in some other detail, like they're trying to persuade me. I don't need any more information at that point. I've got all the information I need. If I need more information as a client, I'll ask you. Just be quiet so I can think. How many times have you all been in that situation as consumers where you've been trying to decide whether you're going to buy something or not, and the salesperson won't shut up? Do you ever buy? Of course not, because all you're thinking is the annoying salesperson won't let me think. And yet we do it all the time with these folks. Silence is our friend. The longer it takes them to answer your question, the more likely the answer to that question is going to be yes. Because what they're doing is they're walking through. Now, let's see, I don't have time to write these articles, but maybe my wife can write them for me. She's a pretty good writer. Maybe I can use AI. but man, that's a lot of money. Yeah, but if I do this, I don't have to spend this other thing that I'm doing in the internet. I can cut out that and I can go with print here. And I really like those neighbors. I do a lot of jobs that I don't make much profit on, but when I do jobs in that neighborhood, I make a lot of money. And that would offset some of this cost. And I don't have all that drive time. When I drive an hour away, it costs me so much money. And I mean, that's what's going on in the client's mind. And if you shortchange that by talking and trying to sell them additional stuff, you're going to lose the sale. Just be quiet. Now, there's an old adage in sales that says the first person to speak loses. I hate that adage, because the truth is, if you don't let them think in silence, you both lose. You both lose, because you don't have a chance to have them in your magazine, and they don't have a chance to grow their business through your magazine. And it just requires you to be quiet and let them think. And if you're somebody that 3 seconds of silence when you ask for the sale drives you crazy, okay, let it drive you crazy and keep your mouth shut, and you'll make more sales. Okay. Anybody have any questions about any of that before we actually start a demo presentation and kind of walk through it? Ken says, would you stop picking a Kia? I always use Kia as my my go-to car. I don't know why. I guess because it's just short and it allows me to get that out there. Anybody have any other questions you want to throw out before we actually walk through the presentation itself? Okay. Well, I tell you what, we'll go ahead and I'm going to switch now. Let me go to the presentation. Share my screen again. Okay. What we're going to do now is I want to walk through the. I'm not actually going to do a presentation because I really want you to hear more of the theory and what you need to accomplish on these screens, because it's very important to remember every slide of our presentation serves a very specific psychological function. And so when you skip around or when you leave things out, you often disrupt some of the flow. So we're going to go through the presentation, and I want you to keep 3 things in mind. And this is really where the advanced comes in. This is no different than what they teach in training. It's just honed a little bit more, because here's what I want you to get in the habit of accomplishing during your presentation. I want you to accomplish 3 things on every slide. Number 1 is I want you to tell the client what that slide means. What does that slide say about our company? Second, I want you to explain to the client how that is relevant to them. Why is that relevant to them? Because as I mentioned earlier, your customers don't care about your magazine. Your customers care about how your magazine can help them. And so you have to connect those dots, because here's the raw truth of it, and we all know this. Most business owners are very good at what they do, but they know very little about running a business doing it. And a lot of times we will assume they connect the dots when they don't. And some things that we say just mean nothing to them because they don't see why that's relevant to their business. So that's the second thing. Number 1, what does that slide say about our business? Number 2, how is that important to them? And number 3, why we're better than the other options at doing that. Those 3 things. We tell our clients all the time, that branding requires repetition. Same thing goes here. If on every single slide you emphasize how that is important to them and can help their business, and on every single slide you emphasize why we do it better than everyone else, guess what you do? You brand that on their mind. So when you get to the close, you know what they're thinking? This magazine's better than every other option I've ever spent, and it helps my business. And that's the ultimate goal. If you've got people thinking that way when you get to the close, they're going to sign contracts. So first of all, right here, first slide. I did this earlier. I'll kind of go through this again. This is the way I started out. When I was a competitive speaker, one of the things you learn in competitive speaking is when you create a speech, you want to have an internal preview. You want to have your main points. You want to have an internal review, and then you want to conclude. So what I'm creating here is an internal preview, and it puts the customer's mind at ease. So I'm opening it up with just this simple statement. Hey, I appreciate you taking time to meet with me. I think you're going to find this time well spent because I think we can really help your business grow. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to walk you through a little bit about our magazine, a little bit about our company. I'll show you a quick video, and then I'm going to take you on a tour of one of our magazines and show you the things we can do to help you grow. And then at the end, I'm going to ask you to come on board as a partner with me. Does that sound like a plan? Boom. By doing that, you've now set up the presentation. Notice I said, I appreciate you taking the time instead of thank you for your time. That's a very, very significant difference. I appreciate your time establishes you as a peer. Thank you for your time establishes you as an underling. It creates a hierarchy. Because basically you're saying, oh, thank you for for taking time from your busy schedule to hang out with such a lowly person as myself. I mean, there's a huge, huge difference there. And so then now we're ready for the second slide. So that's the map slide. Now, first thing I'm going to say here is if you are in the habit of talking about how many homes you go to, stop doing that. Stop doing that. Because here's what happens when you throw a home count out there. The last guy that came in was a radio ad guy that says our radio signal goes to 400,000 people. The guy before that was a TV ad guy that says we reach 1 million people. The Google came in and says, you know, we have 250 million searches a month. I mean, or whatever. Those are all big numbers. And you walk in and you throw, we go to 2,600 homes. They can't help but compare the numbers, even though it's not a fair battle because we go to relevant targeted customers. They can't help but do that. They can't help but make that comparison. Now, if they ask you that in the objection phase, then by all means, share it with them. But don't share households, share people. Most of the time, there's 4.2 people per household or thereabouts. So if you go to 3,000 homes, that's 12,000 people. Every other media sells by individuals and not homes. Don't handicap yourself by throwing home count out there when that's not how everyone else is doing it. So you do that. But just to avoid that, when you're on this slide that has the map, hey, I'll tell you a little bit about our map, about our magazine. I think you're going to love it. The first thing I want to point out is who gets our magazine. What you're looking at is a map of everybody gets our magazine. Now, underneath that polygram you're going to see Bluegrass Estates, you're going to see Equestrian Woods, you're going to see the Champions, you're going to see a lot of those high-end neighborhoods. And the reason we focus on those high-end neighborhoods is because that's where the profit comes from for businesses like yours. And we're the only one that reaches every single home in that coverage area. Boom. Do you hear how I did it? 3 things. What we do, why it's important to them, and that we do it better than everybody else. Next slide. Hey, one of the key things we do that's really cool, that really separates us, is the local family on the front cover. Every family that's on every cover of North Jessamine Living lives in North Jessamine. And the reason we do that is because of our small distribution. Every single person that gets the magazine is going to be connected to that family on the front. And that guarantees they read the magazine. And if they read the magazine, they're going to see your ad. And we do that better than that. We have some of the highest read rates of any publication out there. Boom, same thing. Covered it. Now, we also take your message and we put it on Facebook, Instagram, and Google Ads to those same people to give you a total solution to help you grow your business. Boom. Boom. Now, notice that's not taking it much longer than what you're doing there before, but you're making those points. Then you go to the next one. Hey, one of the cool things, we're one of the fastest growing media companies in the U.S. We've gone from 6 magazines to over 1,200 in a decade. And I can tell you right now, the reason we're able to do that is because we're helping businesses just like yours grow. If our customers don't grow, we don't grow. And one of the coolest things on this slide, you'll see down there in the bottom, those GD USA awards. That are awards that we win year after year after year for helping small businesses just like you build effective marketing campaigns. And if you partner with me today, you're going to be able to tap into those award-winning artists to build your campaign to help your business grow. Oh. Once again, did you hear it there? Fastest growing, better than everybody else. Our customers grow, we grow. You get to use these things. I am always connecting the dots for them to make sure they understand why that is important. Because here's the thing. Our growth means nothing to them. You could argue it kind of maybe does away with their fear of print or something like that. And it does to a degree, but ultimately it has to be tied back to them. We grow because we help thousands of businesses just like yours grow. And once again, I also normalize them being in the magazine. Next up, why the growth? One of the questions we get asked all the time is why the growth? Why are you guys growing so fast? I'll tell you, reason's pretty simple, is we created the best tool ever for helping a business like yours. We combine the best part of magazines with the best parts of social media, connecting people who share a love for their community. Now we added the Facebook, Google Display, BVM Sports all together. We really took the best parts of all of these different advertising opportunities, rolled them into a single product to create a tool for helping your business grow. And then we stuck a family on the front cover to guarantee the success. Boom. Just very, very quickly. Then go to the next slide. Hey, I got a quick video here. It's our founder actually going into detail about the little things that we do with the magazine that you might never even notice, that's designed to help businesses just like yours. Boom, hit play and run it. Now, if you are skipping the video, you're costing yourself money. Simple as that. You're costing yourselves money. Because the truth of the matter is there a person on this call that if you had the opportunity to take Dave Durand on an appointment with you, that you would say no? You'd say, no, Dave, I got this one. Of course you wouldn't. But even beyond that, what the video does is it teaches. Just like our expert contributors are a valuable tool because it helps teach the consumers and build trust, If you can educate your client about advertising and marketing, it builds trust. Now, if you or I were during our presentation was to say everything that Dave says, exactly like Dave says it, it would sound like a sales pitch. By having a third party do it on a whiteboard video, which we associate with education, it feels like a teaching moment. And so the bottom line is when that video is done, that client trusts you more because you educated them. And that is so vital towards that psychology of helping this customer reach that decision to come on board. Now, as soon as that's over, does that make sense? And I'm sure none of you have ever had anybody, when you ask that question, say otherwise than it makes sense. So now we come to this slide. And this is where you really do start to teach a little bit. This is where you start to teach, because most business owners don't understand the difference between advertising and sponsorships. This gives you an opportunity to do that. And then you'll notice the little green box over to the side. Those are actually to intersect objections. And they come into play if you already know what that client is spending money on. Because each of those each of those six actually represents another opportunity for advertising that they may be using. And it gives you an opportunity to kind of leverage that a little bit and get past that. So let's imagine that I've got somebody that is advertising in a big neighborhood magazine. You know, one of those great big thick magazines that comes into play. And I get to this slide. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, does that make sense? And then I'm going to say, hey, I want to kind of build on a little something Dave said there about advertising versus sponsorships. You know, one of the things I mentioned earlier that we target these high-end homeowners because they're more profitable. It's very important to also recognize how they make decisions. They make decisions based on how they perceive your business. Is your business part of their community? Are you an expert at what you do? Do you share their values? So we take a sponsorship approach to advertising rather than an advertising approach. Advertising is basically use me, use me, use me, use me. Sponsorship is more about, hey, I'm part of your community. I'm one of you. And when you need me, I'm here. And the reason we do it that way is because that's how these profitable customers respond. It's how they make decisions. You know, I know your business has probably done pretty well in the past, maybe by being in some of these bigger magazines. But, you know, when we were building our magazine, we took into account that just getting a magazine doesn't always mean you read it. And sometimes these really big magazines create so much noise that your ads gets lost. So we intentionally kept our magazine small. We send it to the homes. We stick that family on the front cover to guarantee it's going to be read, because we want to make sure that your ad is seen and doesn't get lost in the noise. Boom, and then I go on. I just addressed that big magazine without calling it out by name, but I did use that chart as a way of measuring that. So once again, you heard what we do, why it's important, and we do it better than anybody else. Okay, now comes the slide that everybody screws up. Everybody screws this up. And I can tell you right now, video, magazine tour, this slide in order are the three most important things you're putting out there. Because this actually allows you to help the client understand our magazines. But what I'm finding when I do role plays is I'm finding most of you most people I work with don't understand the relevance of this slide. They don't understand. And what happens is, over and over, what the client hears is like a major left turn. Here you're talking about our magazine, sponsorship versus advertising. And oh, by the way, did you know 5 Hour Energy advertises with NASCAR? And they're completely lost. And the client spends the entire time trying to figure out what the heck 5 Hour Energy and NASCAR or Red Bull and skiers has to do with our magazine. And most people just completely lose that. And it so derails the presentation that it muddies the water, and confused customers do not buy. So I'm going to tell the 5 Hour Energy story. I use 5 Hour Energy just personally because I think it's a better representation of what we do. The Red Bull story makes me uncomfortable because they didn't buy advertising. They gave away drinks. And I would rather not promote a company that avoided advertising. That doesn't seem to get my message across real well. So I do the 5 Hour Energy. So this is the way I tell the story. And you know, this is how you have to tell it, but you have to get the main point across. The main point is 5 Hour Energy identified a community that they wanted to reach. Remember, that's what we're doing. We identified a community this business wants to reach. They inserted themselves into that community, stayed there long enough for that community to adopt them. And that's what happens with our magazines. So here's the way I tell it. Feel free to borrow, steal, whatever you want to do, but you have to make that point. You know, a lot of people here wear a magazine and they kind of think of maybe Time, Newsweek, some of those old magazines. But I can tell you right now, the way we are built, we function a lot more like NASCAR than like Time magazine. Now, when you think about NASCAR, you think about this loyal fan base that's just obsessed with NASCAR. Well, if you look at 5 Hour Energy, you know, the drink, you know, that's on the shelves everywhere, it languished for years and nobody knew who they were. And they made the decision that they wanted to identify a community, much like you did with North Jessamine, that's important to their business. And so they decided to sponsor a car with NASCAR. And so for 2 years, they signed up where every weekend, a car with the 5 Hour Energy logo would circle the track. And the fans would see that car week after week after week. People at home would see the 5 Hour Energy car week after week after week. Sometimes it'd be on the leaderboard, sometimes it wouldn't, but they kept seeing that. Now, initially, all the NASCAR fans said, oh, yeah, you just want us to buy your drink, blah, blah, blah. But after a while, when they saw that 5 Hour Energy was there to stay, and week after week, they got to be reminded that 5 Hour Energy was part of their NASCAR community, eventually, they adopted them, and sales went through the roof. And that's what we do with the magazines. You've already told me that North Jessamine County is a market that's important to you. Now what we do is we stick you in that market month after month after month while they're reading about what a great place North Jessamine is to live, and they see your message until eventually they're going to adopt you and you're going to be part of their community. And that's when you'll see the results of this campaign. Boom. Now, did you hear the points there? How closely that marries what we do with our magazines? So now, and you can use this forever. When they come back 3 months from now and say, I've been in the magazine 3 months and not one single person said they've seen the ad, you can just say, hey, remember what we talked about with 5 Hour Energy? If they had just driven around the track twice, their campaign would have been worthless. But it's because they kept seeing them over and over and over again that they eventually adopted you. And that's what we're doing. Right now, you've only driven around the track 2 or 3 times. You can't expect them to know you yet. I mean, and it gives you that ability to always reference it because it's such a tool for understanding how our magazines work. Okay, Next slide. Now, I mentioned earlier that we take everything we do and we bundle it with Instagram, Google Ads, and Facebook. Well, here's what we do. We just literally geo-fence these same neighborhoods. And those same people who are seeing you in the magazine are now going to start to see you on their computer screens as well. And it just reinforces what you're doing. Research shows that when you combine print with digital, both of them are supercharged. Now, we keep this incredibly simple. We take care of resizing the ads. We design your ad, we resize it for all the Google stuff and all the Facebook stuff. You don't have to do anything. I know the last thing you want to do is deal with advertising all the time. And we created this program so you've got one meeting. You and I will meet once a month. I'll drop a magazine by. We'll say, hi, how are the kids? And that's really all you have to do to have this campaign. We keep it very, very simple. And with that, we provide an impression report so you can see how many people are seeing your digital ad. And we really have created this for a package for everybody. We've got a really good package. We've got a better package. And then we got the best package, which allow you to expand and get more coverage depending on what you need. Boom. And then we go on. Now, notice how quickly I went through digital. We do a very simple digital program. You should keep it very simple. Good, better, and best. That's it. And we stick it in front of there. And now I go to this one. Now, remember earlier when I was talking about a good speech, I talked about you have an internal preview, you make your points, and then you have an internal review. That's what this slide is. It's recapping. A lot of people get to this slide and they skip over it because, oh, I've already said all that stuff. Repetition, repetition, repetition. The more you say something, the more likely people are to remember it. So you get to this slide, you just need to recap. Hey, I know we've already gone over this again, but I want to make sure we're on the same page here. First of all, our biggest weapon is our open rate. You know, almost 90% of the people open the magazine and read it, and that's because of that family on the front cover. We go to all high-end homeowners, those are your profitable customers that really build your business without necessarily creating more workload for you. And then finally, we direct mail it. We put it directly in the hands of the right people. And that is very powerful. The penetration, these are customers you want, and these are customers that other people pay attention to. And everything in the magazine is about the community and relevant to these people's lives. And that is so important. Now, what I do is recap everything real quickly. And then I'm ready to move on to the tour. Now, I'm going to go through the tour as it is online with the RGP. If you're doing it in person, you obviously have Mayberry in your hands. So a couple of tips that I want to give for the tour is, first of all, use a pen to point. You lay it in front of you and use a pen to point. Don't use your finger, because if you use your finger, it is inevitable that you're going to use this finger after a while. Everybody automatically switches to it. And suddenly you've lost their attention if you're flipping them off during the whole tour. And it happens all the time. And it's such a little thing. If you use a pen to point, it takes that off the table. The second thing I'm going to say here, and this is not in the digital version, but you need to do it when you're doing the, first of all, use Mayberry. Do not use your magazine. And I cannot emphasize this enough. Use Mayberry. The reason you do that is multifold. First of all, the last thing you want to do is to have them looking at all the clients you currently have in your magazine while you're touring it, because they're not listening to you. They're thinking about the experience they had with Joe's Plumbing 2 years ago, where the guy, whatever it is, it's either going to be positive or negative. They're thinking about those businesses. They're thinking about, hey, maybe I can call Joe, find out if he likes the magazine or whatever. Or they don't like that person, and you're going to be doing it. When you're using Mayberry, Mayberry never changes. I mentioned earlier about the importance of doing a consistent presentation. That is vital when you're doing your tour. If your magazine is changing every month because you're using yours Every month, you're having to relearn what you say. When you use Mayberry, it never changes. So you can get good and consistent at the presentation. And then finally, Mayberry has all the bells and whistles. Most of you do not have a 2-page center spread sold into your magazine. Well, guess what? If the client never sees a 2-page center spread, what are the chances they're going to buy a 2-page center spread? Zero. So you limit your sales to only what you've already sold. You want to use Mayberry every time. The second thing I'm going to say about Mayberry, make sure when you're planning out what you say in your tour, that you identify an 8th page ad. Make sure you identify an 8th page ad as a community awareness ad. And when you get to that part of the tour, simply say, hey, and I want to pay close attention to this little ad right here. This is our community awareness ad. And what it does is it makes sure that everyone in our neighborhoods knows who Preston Plumbing is. Because at the very beginning, if they don't know who you are, they can't choose you. So if we don't do anything else today, make sure we leave here with one of these. Boom. And I just established the low bar for the contract that I'm going to walk out of here with. If we don't do anything else today, make sure we leave here with one of these so that everyone who lives in Bluegrass Estates, Colonial Heights, Equestrian Woods, knows who you are. Okay, now I'm going to go through the electronic version of the tour here. And I'm going to really, I want you to listen to how I am painting the business into the tour. You've got to be their imagination because most of the time they can't be. Okay, so I'm going to go here. I open it up. There's the cover. I say, hey, I'm going to take you on a quick tour of a sample magazine we have. It's got all the bells and whistles here. I just want to show you a few things that we do that you probably wouldn't even notice that are specifically designed to help your business. I've already talked a lot about the cover on the family on the front cover. I cannot overemphasize how important that is to making sure your ad is seen. Now, I'll tell you one other thing. That family on the front cover guarantees not only that people read it, but that they almost never throw the magazine away. Because if I know the Smith family, it's almost insulting to them if I throw away the magazine with them on the cover. So that means that magazine's going to stick around for a while. So it means long after your TV ad has been seen and gone, your radio ad has been heard and forgotten, the newspaper ads wrap in the birdcage, that Google search has been moved on to somebody else, your ad in my magazine will still be alive and well. There will be people in this community who will see your ad from this month in this magazine 5 years from now and know who you are. You don't get that with hardly any other media. Okay, next slide. We always feature that family on the front cover. This is the most read page in the magazine. And you can see here right now, if you wanted to be the sponsor of the family page, we would put you on this page every month. Now, I know for a fact that you're a family-owned business and you took it over from your dad and your son's planning on taking it over. Can you imagine how awesome it would be that every month, while my readers are reading about the local family, if they saw you, your dad, and your son standing in front of one of your plumbing vehicles saying, the Preston family supports the families of North Jessamine. Think of the warm fuzzies that paints there for your business and how people are always going to associate your business with family values. And remember, That's how these people make decisions. Now, I want to talk a little bit about our expert contributor role. This is really our kind of hidden gem. There may be a bunch of plumbers in the magazine, but there's only going to be one expert plumber contributor. That means that if that is you, and I hope it is, that means every month your picture is going to be on this page with your contact information, and it's just simply going to say expert plumber. And you look at that other side, every time, up to 4 times a year, you get to write an article that teaches people about plumbing, because it's not often you get a chance to build trust with a potential customer before they ever choose to hire you. But that's what our expert contributor articles do. They show people you know what you're talking about. So if you look at this page, instead of being this chiropractor, this would be you. That could be your picture, John Preston, up there in the corner. It can be maybe, 4 ways to stop your pipes from freezing this winter. And just it educates, and then your ad would be right there beside it. And you would have that full page, which not only said, hey, I know what I'm talking about, but it begins to build trust with these customers. Now, notice I mentioned on 3 separate occasions his face on that page, so he could imagine it, his contact information. I suggested an expert article he could write. I mean, that's another way you could be prepared for every presentation, is to have a list of 3 or 4 expert articles that person could write and include them here in the tour, because that's going to inspire their imagination. Because they're going to start thinking, man, yeah, people ask me that all the time. Oh, yeah, I could write about that. I could write about this. I could write about that. Now they're starting to see themselves in the magazine. And once they start to see themselves in the magazine, it makes it harder and harder for them to see themselves not in the magazine. So be sure to paint that in. Next, we also do a story about your business. This is a chance for you to tell people why North Jessamine is so important to you. I understand that, you mentioned earlier that your grandmother lived out there. Connect with them, because these are customers that like to hear your story. And what we do is connect you with those customers. So we do a story about you. All of our long-term customers are there. We also have these content sponsors opportunities. This gives you a chance to lock in a place in this community when people are thinking about certain things. And, maybe, you do a lot of special events. So maybe you want to be on the events calendar page. So this is an opportunity for you to really kind of fine tune your ad campaign with these special content sections. We also do real estate. This is another reason why people read the magazine cover to cover, because everyone that gets this magazine is a high-end homeowner. This is their stock report. When you own a home, it's an investment. And you wonder how much your investment is worth. Well, the way you know is to see what your neighbors' homes are selling for. And that makes this an incredibly well-read page in the magazine. But once again, guarantees people are reading our magazine cover to cover and seeing your ad. We also do some big premium spots. Now, I can tell you right now, I've talked to people before that are, they want to make sure that everybody knows this is their territory. Now, I want you to imagine for just a second that I'm flipping through this magazine and I come to the center spread and I look up, and all the way across this magazine, I see every one of your crews and their families and all your vehicles there in front of a big home in my neighborhood. And it just simply says, North Jessamine, we got you covered. Preston Plumbing. That sends the message that you own this community. Can you imagine any other plumber coming in and buying a little quarter-page ad when they see you owning that entire space? No. I call that the peeing on the fire hydrant ad. It claims this territory for your business because you're so dominant that you're taking up the magazine and really sending that message to the public. Now, We've talked a lot about what we do in the magazine. We talked about the community awareness ad. We've talked about all these different ways to not only let people know you exist, but give them a reason to choose you. That's what the feature sponsor does. That's what the expert contributor does. It's what the realtor sponsor, the content sponsor, all of these are designed to give the people in my neighborhoods a reason to choose you over your competitors. And as you can see, we've put so much science into this. We've built this to be the best tool that was ever created for helping a business like yours grow. Can you think of a better way to reach this market? Now, notice how I set that up. We created this to be the best tool. Can you think of a better way to reach this market? And there's the end of my bookends. That's my bookend. So all the way through here, what did I do? Here's what we do. Here's why it's important to you. We do it better than anybody else, and I painted them into the tour. So now I'm ready to move on. Now, remember what we said earlier. This is the end of the presentation. So now we're ready to transition to the close. So remember what I said, up until now, it's all about energy, excitement. Now we're going to shift to empathy and understanding to make them feel comfortable. So as soon as they say, can you think of any better way to reach this market? No, I can't think of a better way. Then you simply say, well, I tell you what, I get the idea you like the magazine. If money wasn't an issue, would you want to be a part of it? They always say yes. But if they don't say yes, you need to figure out why and handle that objection now before you get into the close. Because when you get into the close, it needs to be about money and only about money, because that gives you power. So we're now ready to transition. So before we transition to the close, anybody have any questions about the presentation aspect? Okay, well then let's go on to close. So remember, we're segueing it. Hey, I get the idea you really like the magazine. If money wasn't an issue, would you want to be a part of the magazine? Okay, then. My job now is to find a campaign that you're comfortable with that will help you grow your business. We're going to start with ad size. When it comes to ad size, how do you see your business? We've got tens of thousands of advertisers all across the country. So we've gotten a pretty good sense of what works for each kind of business. So read through these descriptions and tell me, how do you see your business? Now, they're either going to come up with an answer real quickly or they're not. Sometimes they're going to say, and you've all heard this, well, it just depends on the cost. Okay, well, that's where you want to kind of make light of it. You don't want to make fun of them, but you do want to make light of it. And the way I respond to that is just very simple. Well, duh. Of course, it's the price. If it was about the price, everybody would want the two-page center spread. But let's just assume for a second that we're looking at the best option. We'll worry about price here in just a second. If price wasn't an issue, how would you see your business? And if they don't give you an answer immediately, pick one for them. Pick one for them. And the reason you're doing that is, once again, what is holding them back at this point is their insecurities. And the moment they feel pressured to pick an ad size and they can't pick one, that just feeds their insecurities. And now they're thinking, well, shoot, I can't even pick an ad size. How in the world am I going to make a decision on this? And it just fuels the things they're insecure about. So the moment they can't pick something, if it's more than a couple seconds, just say, hey, I tell you what, let's do. Let's just go ahead and start with the full page. I know a lot of plumbers really like that. It's a strong size, And then if it turns out that that's more than you're comfortable with, we can always adjust later. Or if you're not ready to quite go that far, say, hey, let's just start with the half page. I know a lot of plumbers really like the half page, especially if they're an expert, because they can put their article with the half page and it creates a full page of content. So why don't we just start with a half page and we can adjust from there and go from there. They're always going to say, take it off. And even if you want to throw in the line, a lot of people have trouble picking an ad size because it's not easy, especially if you've never advertised before. So why don't we just start with a half page and go from there? Go ahead. Do not sit there and demand that they pick an ad size before you move forward. However, do not go past this page unless you've got an ad size. So if it, and we do some people that are working with the big package close. In that case, you just say, hey, we've got ad sizes to fit every size business, every size budget. I'm just going to start with the full page here because I don't know what your finances are. We'll build from there. If it turns out that that's too much, you'll now figure out something that you are comfortable with. Boom, and move on. But you always want to leave this with an ad size in mind. You got your next slide. We do all long-term contracts. Just like I said, if 5 Hour Energy had just drove around the track twice, they would have never gotten the crowd to adopt them. They would have never become the powerhouse they are today. The shortest we'll do is 12 months. I can tell you 12 months is usually for people that aren't sure this is a good market for them, or they're just not sure they're going to be around for very long, quite frankly. Most of our folks, all of our experts are 3-year agreements because we don't want fly-by-night companies in there. We want companies that are going to be here for the long haul for our residents. Plus, there's a lot of savings that goes in to a 3-year agreement. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and work on some pricing. I will say this real quickly. We do offer inflation insurance is what I call it. I don't know of anybody else that does this. It basically means that we will never raise your ad, the price of your ad in the magazine. I mean, think about that for a second. 10 years from now, you have no idea what you're going to be paying for gas. You have no idea what you're going to be paying for electricity. You have no idea what you're going to be paying for insurance. But I can tell you exactly, if you stay with our magazine, what you're going to be paying for your magazine ad. That's powerful. That lets you really plan the future of your business, which is really cool. Now, got a quick video here. I'm going to show you. It talks about being the expert, which is really one of the most dominant positions in our magazine. While you watch this, I'm going to work up some pricing. Okay. That's while the ad's there. Now, I'm going to switch over. I want to do a custom solution. Okay. That pop up. Notice it's North Jessamine. I'm going to pick my ad package. Full page, Facebook. Okay, there we go. So here I am. Here's my package, starting with a full page. I always want to go, assuming I don't have an expert in the category, I always want to go full. Always want to go no discount 12 months, discount 36, discount expert. So the reason I'm looking at this is I'm going to pull this up just a second, display this here. Here's my 3 choices right now. Now, notice I call this the Goldilocks effect. Notice the first one is always the highest. First one's always the highest. The second one is always the lowest. Most people don't want to pay the highest price for anything, but at the same time, most people don't want the lowest price either. And then the third one is right in the middle with a bunch of other bells and whistles. Now, the other thing that I'm looking at here is I like to go ahead down here at the bottom And I actually usually have this built into my package. I always like to say artwork included. And I say that across the board here. Now, like I said, my packages that I have saved have these automatically in there because I want to do it now. I also say inflation insurance. Okay. And now the reason that I'm popping these in here is not so much for the client's benefit, although there is quite a bit, but it also reminds me when I'm presenting prices to talk about it. Let's see. And then I do the no additional digital admin fee. Because if they have bought from a digital only company, they know that most of the time the price that's quoted does not include the admin fee, which is often higher than the fee themselves. So now if you look up here on my display, you'll see that these three are here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to present this to the client, and I'm going to walk through it. I'm just going to go ahead right here. This is how I would present this to the client. Okay. I mentioned earlier that we were going to start with the full page. I'm going to start at the top of the mountain. I'm going to show you everything we have to offer. And then in the event that you're just not comfortable here, you and I will walk back down the mountain till we find something that you're comfortable for. So if we look at a full page campaign, which is going to get you a full page in the magazine every month with our best Facebook campaign and our best Google display ad campaign, and that includes all the artwork. As you know, if you know from buying advertising, artwork's often very expensive. We include the inflation insurance, which means the print version, the print ads will never go up. And if we don't add an extra digital admin fee, it's going to be $2,200 a month. However, since most of our advertisers go ahead and commit for the longer term, which is much, much more affordable, you can see here, if you just go ahead and commit to 3 years, then you basically save almost $500 a month, or $6,000 a year you save. It almost figures out to being, and several extra months for free, just committing for longer term. However, every home that gets my magazine has plumbing problems and questions about their plumbing. I really need a plumbing expert for the magazine. And it is by far the best exposure for your business. If you become our exclusive expert contributor plumber, you're going to get your picture in every magazine, all 36 issues. You get to lock that down and keep any other plumber from being in that expert spot for a minimum of 3 years. You get to write 4 educational articles a year that build trust. You get a free business profile. That alone, when you combine those 3 things together, that's about $20,000 of added value. Plus, you're going to get our best Facebook Pro, which is our best Facebook plan, and our best Google plan. You're still going to get the free artwork, the inflation insurance, and the no additional admin fee. All of that's going to be $2,097 a month. If you were going to pick one of those 3, which one would be best for your business? Now, notice how I asked that. I didn't ask which one you like. I asked if you were going to pick one of those 3, which one would be best for your business? If you presented it correctly, there's almost no way not to say the expert, because of all the extra things you get here. And then as soon as they say, well, the expert, of course, then you just say, this is the closing question or my closing question. Are you ready to become my plumbing expert then today? Are you ready to become my plumbing expert then today? Boom. Now, shut up and listen. This is what we talked about earlier. Don't say anything. Because here's what most of you are thinking at this point. Most of you are thinking, oh my God, he's not going to pay $2,100. If he hesitates at all, it's because the price is too high. I need to panic and drop it. Don't do that. Just wait. And he's going to come back with one of three things. Maybe one of four. He's going to say, sure, let's do it. And the percentage will. In which case, you try not to smile real big. You just say, hey, welcome aboard. And, pretend like you're not absolutely about to pass out inside because you just made $1,600 a month. Or he's going to say no, which if he says no, what does that mean? That means the price is too high. Because earlier he said that if money wasn't an issue, he'd want to be in the magazine. So now he's saying no, that means it's too high. Or he's going to say, I need to think about it. And it's very important to remember, I need to think about it is shorthand for that's too high. I'm just embarrassed to tell you that. 90% of the time. Or you wouldn't stop talking and let him think about it, so he's got to think about it on his own time sometime. So that's what we're looking at. Now, the third option, the fourth option, totally different. I need to speak to so-and-so, and that's handled entirely differently. I will say real quickly, if you do get that one, the first thing to ask is, hey, if it was entirely up to you, would you want to do it? Do you want to be a part of the magazine? And if they say, I'm not sure, then you've still got some more selling to do. Because if they legitimately need to pass it along to somebody else and they're not sold, they're going to half-ass the job of passing it along. And it's not going to happen. So you need to get them to commit that they would do it and handle their objections first. And then once you get to that point, then you simply say, well, what happens when they say no? Because they're going to say no. We all know they're going to say no if they don't see the presentation. Because, what happens when they say no? Because all they're going to see is the price in the magazine. They're not going to see everything that you've seen about all the value we bring to the table. So what can we do to make sure that they have all the information they need to make a good decision? And work them through that conversation. So that goes on. But most of the time, even that is just a delay tactic because they're trying to kick off making the decision. So let's deal with the no and the I need to think about it. Because you're going to deal with those the exact same way. All you do is come back and you say, hey, just a few minutes ago, you told me that if money wasn't an issue, you'd want to be in the magazine. Can I assume that you're just not comfortable with that price? Now, think about that language for just a second. If I were to say, can I assume that price is too high for you? That's an attacking question. That makes them think you think they're a failure. Or if I say, can I assume you can't afford that? Once again, that makes them think you think they're a failure. But if you say, can I assume you're just not comfortable with that? That makes them think you respect them as a business owner. That's a whole different world. They're always going to say, yeah, that's a little bit more than I wanted. And guess what you just did? You opened the door for the money conversation. If you accept the, I need to think about it, and I call you back on Monday, and you call back on Monday, here's what's going to happen. They're going to look at the phone and they're going to say, oh, that's John calling. And they got a decision to make. They can either answer the phone and have a very uncomfortable conversation about their company finances that they don't want to have. They can answer the phone and make up a total BS reason for not being in the magazine so they can avoid the conversation they don't want to have. Or they can ghost you and avoid the conversation they don't want to have. Which one of those is never going to happen? They're never going to answer the phone and have that difficult conversation. Now, when you say you're calling them back on Monday, what you're thinking is, well, if I call them back on Monday, it turns out that price is too high, I can then bring it down to a half page. But you never get to have that conversation because you put them in charge of when that conversation takes place. And it's never going to happen. So just simply saying, hey, can I assume that you're just not comfortable with that price, in a very non-threatening, comfortable way, you now get to talk about money. Because they come back and they say, yeah, it's a little bit more than I was looking to spend. That's when you ask this simple question. You either ask, we talk in training, how much too much is it? Or what I actually use and a lot of people use is, well, let me ask you, are we in the ballpark? Are we out in the parking lot, or are we way out in outer space? Because that will tell you how much you need to reduce the price for them to be comfortable. If they say something to the effect of yeah, we're in the ballpark, then all I've got to do is come back here, come back to my custom solution. At this point, because we're just talking about the expert, I'm going to deselect these other two. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to change my discount from 20% to 30%. Okay. I'm now going to come down and change my pros to premiums. Okay. Now I'm down to 1,500. Remember, I was just over 2,000. And I'm going to say, hey, let's do this then. Let's scale back just a little bit because I don't want you getting anything you're not comfortable with. And let's do this. If we can make a decision today, so now I'm throwing in the first appointment discount. I'm taking away their time to think about it. Remember, if you drop the price, you have to take something away. So I'm taking away their time to think about it, and drop them from Facebook from pro to premium. I'm saying, so if we can do this, if we can just make a decision today, so it doesn't eat up a bunch of our time, and we take the pro, we go from the best Facebook and Google campaigns we have to offer, and scale that back to our just really good, our better one. You're still going to get the Facebook retargeting. But if we do that, I can drop that price by about $500 a month, bringing us down to $1,558. Are you more comfortable with $1,558 than you were $2,050? Of course they are. That's $6,000 a year they're saving. And then as soon as they say yes, then you ask for the sale again. So if we can do that, are we ready to go ahead and be my plumbing expert? Now, $1,558 seemed like a lot of money, but it doesn't seem like nearly as much as the almost $2,100 I was looking at a second ago. Or do you say, hey, yeah, we're kind of out in the parking lot. Then you do those same changes, except you come in, you change the full to a half. Boom. Display solution. Say, hey, well, if we do this, I tell you what, let's just do this then. Let's drop you back to a half page. I will throw in a free first month upgrade to a full so you can see what that looks like. See if you like it. You still get artwork included, inflation insurance, no additional digital admin fee. You still get to be the expert, all the articles. You get the premium, which still gets you your retargeting on the Facebook and the Google. And now we've almost cut the price in half. If we can do all that for $1,043, are you ready to be my plumbing expert? Ask again. If they're still not there, take another shot at it. Well, I tell you what, we're obviously not where you're comfortable yet. Like I said, my most important thing is that we have something you're comfortable with. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and let's go with the third page. Still a good, strong campaign. I'm going to leave the Facebook at the premium rate because I really think that's something that's perfect, that'll help your business. I'm going to go ahead. Let's hold off on Google entirely right now. So if we hold off on Google entirely right now, we go with the third page. Now I'm going to go ahead and slip that extra 5% up here on my discount. And now I can come back and say, okay, let's do this. If we drop that back to a third page, keep you as the expert. So you're going to be the only plumbing expert in the magazine. You're going to get that free business profile. We're going to just keep the Facebook premium for right now. We're going to hold off on the Google till we get, more comfortable with what we're doing. You still get the artwork and the inflation insurance and all that. And now we're down to 700. So we're looking at about a third of what that first cost is, and you still get to be the expert. Are you ready to be my plumbing expert? You are? Okay. Well, let's sign that and congratulations. Let's start planning your articles out. Boom. And you're ready to go. Now, you keep working that down because you're going to be better off with a signed 8th page ad than with a maybe 2-page center spread on Monday. And the goal is to find something they're comfortable with. Now, let's just say we've worked it all the way down. Let's say we just bring it all the way down and we're down to the 8th page ad. Come up here. I go, okay, go back this off to the standard. I'm going to go the 8th page ad. I'm down to the 35%. I'll leave it at there. I always hate going to 40 because it really doesn't matter. I'm going to bring Facebook back there just so I've got a little bit of digital. Actually, in this case, let's just go with the Google, get some few more impressions. Okay. Got the Google there. And I was like, okay, so now I come back and I was like, okay, well, you remember earlier we talked about our community awareness ad and how the most important thing is that everybody in my neighborhood knows you exist. Let's just go with that today. We're going to do an 8th page ad, get you in every magazine for 8 cents per home per month. Then that makes sure that every one of these homeowners knows Preston Plumbing exists. I'll still throw in the business profile, and we're going to go with the basic low-end Google campaign, which is going to get you about 10,000 impressions to marry that. You still get the artwork, you still get the inflation insurance, and that's going to be $274 a month. I'm going to go ahead and write that up. Do you want to put that on your credit card? Which credit card do you want to put that on? Your American Express or your Visa? And then start writing the contract. Start writing the contract. Because now you're ready to go. Come back here, hit your magic button, and start writing it. Because now, they've already expressed to you that they know this is important for their business. And now you have to make it work for them to say no. And start writing it up. Make them stop you from writing the contract. Because you're in a point that you both have agreed they need to be in. And then if they stop you, then you're fine. But that's where we need to be. And it starts with remembering this. Your job's to help the business. And sometimes your job's to help the business despite their insecurities. And so you want to make sure that when you get to this point, you're doing everything you can to help them make that decision because it's the right decision. They acknowledged it was the right decision the moment they said, this market's important to me and I can't think of a better way to reach it. And then you just do it. You're better off leaving with an 8th page ad signed than a potential 2-page expert center spread on Monday.